Hi everyone, today is Monday, October 22nd, and I'm not sure what the title of this video is going to be about, um, or what the title of this video is going to be, but I've been trying to find out what exactly is the structure of a central administration, and how does this central administration actually work for everyone in the community. And one way to measure this is to actually look at something called differentials. And there's many different ways to actually come to conceptualize and see something as a differential. So what I've been looking at is I've been looking at the black differential to see, okay, what's going on here in the black community. But I've also been looking at differentials related to economic mobility, contribution to economic innovation, contribution to sort of a global economic system. Also looking at differentials related to who can actually get access to capital and further things. So I've been trying to understand, like, why is there so many problems in this place called I'm starting with one province, and I'm going to go through all the provinces to see how they actually structure themselves. And for anybody that's interested in that analysis, just cite your source, say where you got it from. And the reason why I say that is because there's this practice which is very problematic in, for example, times when it's when it comes time to garner support around participating in things related to policy and making new laws and etc. What happens is we're seeing like a lot of plagiarizing of ideas. So you'll have like one governance structure versus another governance structure, and one governance structure will actually plagiarize the ideas of another governance structure. And in Ontario, Canada, for example, they have this problem with, like, for example, this thing called the Liberal Party of Ontario. Very, very problematic. And my bias is that I explore the I explore and I expose the differentials. So what they had done was they actually they get these pamphlets, and if you look at the pamphlets that they produce, it's not actually their ideas, it's actually plagiarized ideas. So if these people are university educated and they're producing, pamphlets with plagiarized ideas, then that also brings up a lot of questions around ethics and whether or not somebody could actually participate in with an organization who's clearly not in the business to, do a lot of things related to civil, democratic, and ethical. So I'm going to show you something here. I'm trying to understand, like, what exactly is this structure, because to me it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Because if you actually pick up the phone and call these places, the customer service is terrible, horrible. Second, when these places say that they're actually going to follow up, they don't follow up. So what exactly are these people getting paid for? Because there's people who are ending up killed. There's people that are being processed into context related to medicalization and criminalization. So we have some difficulties with that, and we're going to try and understand, like, what exactly is this thing. And so one way to do that is to try and understand, what is the structure? Like, why do they exist? How do they exist? What is their purpose? For example, if someone goes to another country, they want a sense of the central administration in the country. What is their purpose? How do they engage with their populace? And how do they deal with differential? It's the same thing here in Ontario and Canada. And then there's all these different, like, structures from, from the west coast to the east coast, so from the Pacific to the Atlantic. So I'm looking at this, and I just did like a keyword search, and I'm like, okay, what is Ontario government structure? And I came up with this site, and it basically says that there's like a key, what do you call it, like a management structure, and it sort of covers everything. But within that key, it says that, or outside of that key group, there's all these different departments and all these different factions, right? So it also says that they have like all these additional agencies and services. So even though they have a structure like that, that's not to say that everything has to be, you know, gone to the chopping block or whatever. But we have to look at, for example, the quality um, assessment of this particular structure. Because if it's not actually working for everybody, for example, people who are, I don't know, very, very uncomfortable with people like themselves, they still should be able to work with the public because that's why they're getting employed and paid. So I'm looking at some of this stuff, and it's really interesting. It says here that, I'll show you the structure. Here they have diversity. Oh wow, look at that. They integrate women like myself. But if you actually phone this structure and say, oh, okay, I need some information about X, or I need some understanding about a process, you don't even get any kind of customer service. It's terrible. So right here it says, under this particular governance structure, it's called the Ontario Liberals. The Ministry of Government Services, which is, I guess, one department of the government, is modernizing government operations and improving public services. Where did you actually hear that from? And where are they actually, how are they modernizing their stuff? Because when you call the actual different organizations, like here I'll show you, it says that they have all these departments, right? So they have Aboriginal Affairs, Food Stuff, Justice, Child and Youth, Citizenship, Community and Social Services, Safety and Correctional. How have they dealt with something called racial profiling? Community Safety and Correctional Services. Consumer Services, what does that mean? Economic Development Innovation, what does that mean? Education, well, they have something called curriculum violence. How have they dealt with that? Energy, environment. Environment, where is environmental justice? Finance, government, health, and long-term. Incredibly problematic. How come they're not looking at this thing called an OHIP? OHIP is actually it's a credit card basically, and it only caters to whiteness systems and pharmaceutical interests. I'm not a Caucasian person, and there's a lot of persons like me that are not Caucasian. Infrastructure, what do they mean by this? Intergovernmental affairs, what do they mean by this? Labor, municipal affairs, and housing. Well, there's an example of an abusive non-profit structure. What are they doing about that? Natural resources, what does this mean? Does this also mean people? Northern development, mines, tourism, training, college, university, and transportation. Then they say that they have 4 special areas that deals with Aboriginal stuff, French affairs, elderly people in the community. I really hate that word elderly, but people of wisdom, so seniors, and women's directorate. And can you believe that when this women's directorate was contacted, they actually said that they had no resources for poor women. So that made me wonder, okay, like, what exactly is this governance structure? Because, for example, if we look at like other systems in like starting from West Canada and then going across like from Alberta to Saskatchewan to Manitoba to and then go right across right across the country, I should say, to even New Brunswick, PEI, Nova Scotia area. What are we seeing? So I'm going to plot all this data, and we'll see how this data comes out, because it's very important to know not only how people speak about governance, but where do they actually get their information from. There's a lot of problems, with plagiarizing information, and I'm not understanding what this thing called Liberal Government of Ontario is. And the reason why I actually locate the liberals is because they're very problematic. And I actually did, what was it? I think it was like a 50-year. I began with, was it 50 years? A little bit over 50 years. I came across a situation, and then, I was like, okay, I'm going to do like an analysis and see what happened over 50 years to begin. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do 25 generations, right? So, there's a lot of problems, and then what you see currently is you see a lot of like processing of black cadavers, a lot of trafficking of single black women into precarious conditions. You see a lot of like sex trade work with black women, and my particular channel here focuses on something called the black differential. And if you want to find out about other, ethnic groups, then you know what, go look for the information out there, because I'm sure it's there. So this is something here that they show is something called, what do they call it? An ministry organizational chart. So within each department of a central administration, they're supposed to have like a manager, then a supervisor, so they call the manager minister, then a supervisor deputy minister, and then they have like all these assistants, which they call assistant deputy ministers, and then they have these directors, and they have these managers. Well, why do you have these right here? Right? For example, if you have a manager, there's an elected manager, which is the minister. Then you have a manager who is employed with the infrastructure. Okay? So when there's an election, this position changes. So it could change, like, for example, red version, green version, blue version, pink version, whatever version, right? Here, you have like all these ministries, or ministers, I should say. So, manager here, and then you have, okay, supervisors. So what exactly are all these other people here, right? So you go to the directors and you go to the managers, and then you have branch staff. How do these people, branch staff, come to be employed with these types of organizations? They say it's non-partisan, which means that it's not prejudiced against people that have different persuasions. But you see how people operate in these organizations. And this is a public infrastructure. So, you know what? When you're doing like a governance analysis, take a look at how the infrastructure is set up. And for example, connect that to experiences you have. For example, racial profiling, access to good food, affordable education. I was coming across something where I was looking at, okay, how does the general public know about how they can make bills, right? And under this Ontario government, Liberal, they said you have to pay $150 to actually apply to have a bill passed or negotiated. And I thought to myself, that's just wrong, because when you actually start levying charges on citizenship rights, you're actually skewing data. So the data that you need to see differential experiences is actually being skewed by something called, I don't know why they have $150. So if a person is abused, or a person is looking at, okay, improving something related to Securities Commission or insurances or whatever, from poverty, right? They want to try and access the government from poverty position. Why is it that they have to pay $150 to do that? I'd like to hear your thoughts about what you're seeing with respect to the governance structure in your area. Think of governance as a type of central administration, and they use these code words, political, and just erase that word from your vocabulary, because I find the word political is very problematic, because it's not about creating confusion. It's actually about setting better social norms and having discussions and operationalizing ideas from the discussions right away. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. What are you seeing in the central administration structure wherever you are in the world.